What's up, amigos? Today we have the aerodynamics of a TikTok dancer. So it's time to move your groove thing. And who doesn't want to be a TikTok dancer, a famous celebrity on some app that no one cares about? But we have one here. And imagine that she is dancing in mid-air and we've frozen her, but the wake is allowed to go. So we can see that the wake is actually really big. So even though her hips, for example, are the widest part of her body effectively, the wake behind her hips is very small, and that is because they've been tilted on an angle. So the frontal area is actually much smaller compared to the shoulders, which have now been turned like directly onto the floor. That cross-sectional area is very large, which means that the wake is very large, and it's like 3 times the size pretty much. This is a Y plane cutting pretty much halfway through the person, and then it extends downstream and it shows the velocity. Now, one thing that's really interesting to me is if you look around the knees, so the wake itself is actually not impacting the knees, it's behind the knees. But behind the second knee, there's still a major wake from the knee area effectively. So what this tells me is that TikTok dancing is not aerodynamic at all. Even in the parts where there is no geometry upstream of it, there's still a wake somehow. That's how terrible TikTok dancing is. Now, apart from that, the torso makes a huge wake, and you can see that the wake from the legs effectively go down at an angle a little bit. So the legs are producing a little bit of lift. That's probably from the left rear calf at that angle. The torso itself is not really producing any lift at all. It's just being very wakey there. So now we have the same plane, but with the vorticity colored and clipped. So we only see the major stuff here. And what really stands out is that the vorticity around the legs is far greater than everything else. Why would that be? The main reason is, in my opinion, that the 2 legs effectively approximate cylinders. So, and you can even break that up into 4 cylinders perhaps, or even 6, where you have the upper legs, they're 2 cylinders each. Then you have the calves, they're 2 cylinders each. And then you have the feet, which are 2 cylinders again. So you have all these different cylinders at different angles. And each cylinder is going to have a vortex shedding happening off of it. Whereas the upper body itself, we see that there's not really a lot of coherent vorticity coming off there. And that's probably because the upper body itself is not very uniform. There's a lot of like little curves in that break up the vortex shedding. So, and then you can do this in like a regular cylinder as well. If you get a regular cylinder and you taper some bits and you expand other bits, you're going to be breaking up the vortex shedding a lot. So it's not going to be coherent. And that's what we see here, where the bottom half is effectively coherent vortex shedding from uniform cylinders. The top half is from non-uniform cylinders effectively. And this view is 2 Z-planes, one you can see around about the mid-thigh section, one just at the top of the head. And I wanted to see how high the wake goes, and even at the top of the head, the wake is huge still. Like you can see there's only a tiny little bit of the noggin showing, but because the head itself is actually like a sphere, that you get a complex shedding off there, and you're going to be getting a lot of 3-dimensional effects. So that means that flow away from the head is still going to be very wakey. Now, around the thighs themselves, the flow is fairly streamlined until it is fairly streamlined, but there is a periodic shedding coming off of them, which is those vortices that we saw in the other simulation. The closer we get to the hips, which was that demarcation between the very cylinder-like flow compared to the non-cylinder-like flow, the smaller the wake becomes effectively. So now we have the X-planes, but we have them colored in the vorticity going from 10 on seconds to 70 on seconds clipped. So the small stuff we can't see, just the good stuff. And we see the vorticity from different angles now. So around the feet, you can see all these little different vorticity pockets. And as I mentioned, from these different cylinders, they're effectively producing some sort of coherency to the shedding. Whereas when you go upstream, when you go up the person, the rest of her body is very higgledy-piggledy. So there's a lot of small scale stuff that's forming off of each little bit, and there's not any coherent structures really. Apart from that, there's effectively just like a halo ring coming over the entire person. And we see this quite a lot in simulations of bluff bodies where there's just vorticity that's forming around the object in general and then just shedding off. This is not necessarily a vortex ring in this case. It's just vorticity that's being produced at the surface. So that's in a simulation. Make sure to like, subscribe. And if you want to do a TikTok dance as well, follow this person's lead, although tilt your shoulders a little bit more in line with the free stream flow to reduce your wake. That's my tip for you. So if you want to get better at CFD as well, check out the courses in the link description, and I'll see you next session.